This is Breaking Down Security, and I'm Brian Brake. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian, Mr. Boettcher, for Breaking Down Security. Oh, not much.
I cut in there.
Yeah, well, that's
Sorry.
okay. That's all
We're
right.
talking at the same time. It's very confusing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of thing. So, we're only semi-professional podcasters, so we don't have to worry about making mistakes. There are no mistakes when you're semi-professional.
Oh,
yeah, that's what I learned anyway. Yeah, yeah. Till you start getting up to defensive security level, downloads, and then it's like, oh, you got to start worrying about stuff and image and things. So
serious.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yep.
Okay, so let's hope we don't get to that level.
No, I don't
know if I can handle it.
Yeah, we don't want to get that popular. So, how you been this week, Mr. Boettcher?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Working hard.
Very nice.
Getting very little sleep and it's all good.
Working on your skunk works?
Yes.
Yeah.
My skunk works.
That's coming along well then, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be announced at DerbyCon, I guess.
Shut up! Really?
I can announce it on this show like a week before if you want.
Well, I mean, nobody will hear it. You better off just saying it at DerbyCon. All right, that's cool. We can interview you at DerbyCon. Goff's going to be there. Is he going to talk about it in a discussion?
Yes, I think it's going to be in one of his or in his presentation.
Well, that means you're actually going to have to be in the presentation. Right?
Yeah, there'll be a picture of me or a little icon going, well, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you're going to have to be at the discussion, right? Because
I'll be in the audience.
You'll be in the audience, so you just stand up and wave like the Queen, do the thing.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. We'll definitely wait for DerbyCon to unveil that, and then we'll have you guys on after. I'll have to get a stand-in co-host because you can't be a co-host and unveiling stuff at the same time. You can't double dip, separation of duties and whatnot. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It's all legal and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't be double billed in a podcast. So
I have to rescind myself from.
Yep. That's right. So what are we going to talk about this week?
I suppose patch management.
Patch management. Yes. Now, patch management. Did we talk about that in the ITIL podcast? Is that an ITIL part of the framework there?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, wish I could remember because honestly,
it was a while back.
It was a while back. We need to have him back on. That was a very interesting podcast. So the theories expressed by me or Mr. Boettcher are not theories expressed by our employers, past, present, and futures. Please keep that in mind. So patch management, you have a definition of what patch management means. Where did you get the definition from? Is it just Wikipedia?
Google.
All right, right on.
Yeah. So it's a lot broader than I thought.
Oh, really?
But let's go over it. It involves acquiring, testing, and installing multiple patches to administered computer systems. And the patch management tasks include maintaining current knowledge of available patches, deciding what patches are appropriate for a particular system, and ensuring that patches are installed properly, testing them after they're installed, and documenting procedures. That comes from TechTarget website, techtarget.com. So yeah, acquiring, testing, and installing multiple patches to administered computer systems. That's basically what we're talking about. Now, when we think about patch management as security folks, we kind of merge it with vulnerability management because we're thinking, okay, systems have to be patched, otherwise they could be vulnerable, right? So, but it's a lot more than that. For example, if you're a development shop, patch management involves deploying the latest code, that kind of thing.
Well, only if you found patches in that code. Or I guess patch management doesn't necessarily have to be fixing bugs. It could be innovation where you've added new features. Yeah, exactly. And, presumably part of the development lifecycle is testing those new features to make sure they don't break existing functionality or introduce security bugs if you're doing security testing.
So, it involves a lot more than just patching for vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Right. So, and there are a lot of enterprise tools that you could use for patches as well. I mean, I'm kind of used to the guys running their scripts, right?
Yeah.
They deal with Linux servers, so they basically push out commands from, I guess, their central console to the servers and patch that way. I think Red Hat has I don't know what it's called. Let me look it up. They have a patching solution as well for their systems. You install it on a server, blah, blah, blah. It pulls down packages from Red Hat, the latest stuff, or the stuff that you want, not necessarily the latest.
Yeah.
And then you can push it out from there.
There are a number of patch systems. I know where I work at, we use one called Chef, and that uses specialized scripts that go in and push out patches. It'll actually even build some systems for us. There's Puppet, there's, a myriad of them. I mean, and you can even create your own. Centralized, patch management is, I'm thinking from a term of, see an issue with a Java vulnerability, push out the latest Java patch. But it's kind of a difficult thing because patches for operational use can often cause performance issues if you're based on high availability, or you're needing to pump every CPU cycle you can out of a box. Upgrading your patches, or upgrading Java to the latest versions, or upgrading, something as simple as a PNG library can cause a degradation of the performance of the box and actually cause you to waste money if you're in a cloud-based environment, or to, your processes start slowing down because to be safe or secure, you may have to suffer some functionality.
Yeah, it's important to, and the definition includes testing,
sure.
Right?
Sure.
For that. So yeah, it's very important to test your patches before you deploy them, obviously, and not rely on the creator of the patch, like Microsoft, to tell you, oh, this is safe to put on. It's not going to harm your system. The Red Hat solution is called Satellite.
Yeah. One of our friends who used to work with you no longer works there, but he actually set that up. Eric. Yeah, Eric set that up, and then he left because he got a better job, I guess, somewhere else. But because he was awesome. Dude was on the ball. So
you either leave because you get a better gig or you retire. So one of those two. And he didn't retire, so
yeah.
I guess he found something better for him.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. How often should you put out patches? As needed, or which one is better for you? As needed, or should there be releases? Or because a lot of different companies do things called sprints. So you've got 6 weeks in a sprint, for instance. You can only do so much in that time because there's only so many man hours. And if you're not considering security patches or security, updating your patches and testing those things, that eats into sprint time that you can use to put in features and new abilities of your software. So how much time do you think should be given to security? I mean, obviously that means you have to start triaging things. The most serious stuff needs to be patched, but the most serious stuff may also take up a good portion of the sprint.
I think it depends on the maturity level of your organization as far as patch management. There are companies that they got patch management down.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do it on demand if necessary, right?
Sure.
If they feel like there's this new feature they want to push out, they run the feature through the ringer in QA, and then they'll push it out during a maintenance window. Boom, it's done. And they have it down to a science. Others, it's a little bit more involved. I've seen places where they don't patch anything unless it's absolutely necessary. Okay? Because some places they can't afford any downtime. They get SLAs associated with it. They're obviously not as mature, and they don't want to touch the system if it's running fine. You know this.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How many stories have you heard about, consultants going in and finding that Windows NT box sitting in a corner, they don't touch it because it just works. We don't want to touch it because it's the entire accounting system, or, we'll, lose our entire, product if we try patching that, or worse, we can't patch it because we have to wait for the vendor to send us patches.
Right. Or Bob built it from scratch and then he left and nobody knows how to do anything with that system, but it just runs and we don't want to touch it because, we don't know where Bob is and we don't want to hire somebody to come in and just do Bob's job, right? Yeah. Or what Bob built and fix that. So it's easy to fall into that trap of, some customized system that it took near genius to build, and now it's going to take a genius to patch it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't want to touch it because it's not stable, or you don't want the possibility of instability. Organizations, they'll have an old firewall there, and they don't want to touch it because it's too old, and it may have been patched to the max, and then it became unsupported. And for a decade, it's been sitting there, and nobody wants to touch it because they're afraid. Mm-hmm. They don't want to change that that ACL that's completely open, because if they do, something might happen, or they have internal customers. Internal IPs or private IPs coming into their network, and they don't want to fix that either.
Yeah.
Which is pretty dangerous.
You're giving me nightmares, because I remember having to track down a lot of those ACLs to fix things having to do with compliance, And with that, compliance often drives a lot of vulnerability and patch management, because you have to have, say for PCI, you have to have a clean scan. So obviously you can go to, if you don't have any compliance requirements, you can go to management and say, yes, we need to patch these things. And management says, yeah, that would be great if we could do that, but we're not there yet. Let's worry about something else. And oftentimes it's the compliance that's is the driver for a lot of these changes, including patch and vulnerability management. And that's
I got to say, in a lot of places, they would never patch if it weren't for compliance.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's that's an interesting discussion for hopefully next week. I think we're going to have somebody on to talk about that. I hope so.
You jinxed it.
No,
we're not.
You shut up. No,
I told you never say stuff like that.
You shut up your face. He will be on. Maybe. I'm almost 100% sure. He said yes, he would. Anyway, so let's get back to doing the patching. We have to patch. We know we do patching. And we decide we have to triage, because you've got a vulnerability scan and you've got a couple of dozen boxes and they've got multiple hundreds of vulnerabilities. And you're like, well, we're never going to be able to patch all of this stuff because we can't put 2 months of work in a 6-week sprint. It's just not going to happen. So you have to start figuring out ways to make your patching more useful. I know that where I work, we have implemented kind of a triage system where we broke it down by where the system is located in our network, what kind of data is on it, what type of vulnerability it is, and what was the fourth thing? Oh, we do CVSS score only as a throw throwaway, kind of like the fourth line of defense, where like if everything being equal, we go by CVSS score. Yeah. So for us, you really have to know your network. You really have to know your environment. You really have to know the software that's running on the box. So if you have a libpng vulnerability or an X11 vulnerability, one, does X11 need to be on that box? Okay, yes, X11 does need to be on that box, because otherwise you'd be like, well, we can get rid of X11. But a lot of the vulnerabilities, if they're not remote, for us say a remote code execution. If it's on an externally facing internet box, obviously that box is going to be patched more quickly than, say, an internal box with a local privilege escalation, because one, it's internal. Two, there's compensating controls that reduce its effectiveness. Like we have, network controls, we have access controls, we have various other controls and processes in place that make it more difficult for somebody to exploit something internally than externally. That's just the way most companies are. I mean, you have more protections to get into the castle than you do on the outside. So when we go through our list of vulnerabilities, we knock off ones that are false positives, which we try to not have false positives. Even with credential scans, you still have false positives. We also look at ones that don't matter much, like requires user interaction to use. So if libpng it requires a browser, requires a desktop, requires the user to click on a link in an email that has an affected image. One, if you don't have interactive logins and you don't have X and you don't have a browser on the box, that may be a remote vulnerability, but it's not as evil as, say, a bind vulnerability where if somebody sends a malformed packet, you're going to get owned. You know? So that's kind of how we're doing things. And of course, it's always a moving target. We're always trying to, refine the process. What do you guys do at your organization to help with patch management? I mean, obviously you guys have in-house, developers who are developing code like we are. So they put out sprints with, updates to code and everything. How do you guys do your triaging for patching at your office?
Well, typically it'll go through a QA department before it is patched. It depends on the risk, right? So if it's an operating system patch, we will patch our test boxes first.
Sure.
Okay. Obviously. And probably run them a week on that, 2 weeks. And then we'll move on to production or unit test boxes first and then production, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that we don't hit the critical systems, but we'll hit the ones that are less critical and make sure that, because they should be deployed the same, right? They should mirror each other in what's on the server and that kind of thing, what's installed. And that gives you some security in that respect.
Yeah, that really behooves your environment to be as, like you mentioned, things in test have to replicate what's in production, which also means if you've got several hundred boxes in production, obviously you're not going to replicate an entire test environment. You may have a fraction of that, but instead of, say, 10 database servers, you're going to have one database server, one database out of that cluster, and you're going to have one web server instead of 5 in your cluster. You're going to have, you may even have a traffic generating type application that will help simulate traffic to, for load purposes. Yeah. To find out if you can generate enough load to know if there's going to be performance issues on that patch. So that's important.
That's right. And then you can utilize your DR, because everyone should know that's listening that DR is part of security. Patch your disaster recovery systems first as well.
Oh, you want to go that direction?
If you push data to your DR systems, then, patch those as a, DR is a production system. At least we consider it that. Mm-hmm. So, patch those first and then go to your live systems last.
Yeah. For people mostly in the cloud that don't have a traditional, beta site, I know that some companies still use data centers, like traditional data centers. You usually just spin up a couple of additional instances, when something goes down, because, clouds aren't supposed to go down. That's kind of a thing. So if you can have some, say Azure has one cluster in Singapore and one cluster in Ireland or something, you may run some assets over there just for additional redundancy, but they pride themselves on being cloud-based. So for us, we don't have, we don't have the redundancy, the DR type stuff. If something goes down, we just spin up a new instance and go with it. So for us, it's kind of difficult because demoting things out of a cluster is not easy. So when we do patching, when I first started, it was ad hoc. We didn't have a patch process to speak of. Everything was just kind of, yep, there's we need to fix this. Let's do it. And that caused some problems. Obviously, we're customer oriented here. We have SLAs ourselves, like you said. An outage is not a good thing, for the bottom line, because sales don't, customers don't like having outages.
Nobody does, and no business does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And it's, what you were describing earlier was, risk management.
Yeah.
Right. You have to weigh those risks. Do you patch it? Don't you patch it? When do you patch it? How important is it? Are there mitigating controls? To compensate for that risk, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So yeah, go listen to the risk management podcast again, Brian.
Actually, we didn't do that one. That one is actually still sitting, waiting to be released from October last year.
Really?
Yeah, that was one we never released.
Well, there you go. We can listen to
the lost episodes of Breaking Down Security. Yeah.
So yeah, and also, I've noticed that when we're talking about vulnerability management as well and patching, that there have been quite a few things to come out that say, yeah, this is an issue, but it's low. It's very low on the scale of, the CVSS score or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then over time, for example, the RC4 used to be a low.
Oh yeah.
Now it's a medium, right?
Yeah.
So those things that you could be patching that are lows and you don't patch, eventually a lot of them become things you have to patch. So it may be a good idea to patch them early, because what if there's an O-day associated with them and you don't patch because it's a low? You could run into those issues. So if your patch management is mature, you may want to look at those lows and knock those out before they become highs.
Yeah, exactly. And just because they're low doesn't necessarily mean that they're not entirely useful to somebody. One things I've noticed with the CVSS scoring, it's a AL, so it's like, where's the location? Is it remote or local? It's the CIA, and it has an AU, an AL, and an AV or whatever.
Yeah.
It goes along with the CVSS scoring, but it tells you whether or not it's a remote or local, access complexity, authorization required, and then on the CIA triad, if it's no, partial, or complete. And what we do when we're using that for triage is we look at how it can be accessed, whether remote or local. So it's the first little pairing there. And then what kind of auth is required. So if no auth is required and it's remote, local, or a remote vulnerability, those take precedent. I don't put a lot of, and I've seen this in a lot of things. They have an access complexity, low, medium, or high. Well, just because it's a low for some people, that may be a high for others. So depending on the skill set of the person, something that somebody is using that may have a low complexity, they may not be able to use that or exploit that. But somebody who, uses a vulnerability that's high and he has, code for it already, it may be easier for him. So you can't really use the CVSS scores because I find the access complexity kind of ambiguous and spurious. People have different skill sets.
They factor that in, I'm sure, in the total score. Where if it says complexity high, but there's code out there that takes that, high complexity and automates it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does factor that in.
That does. I mean, I'm sure that affects it if there's exploit code or if there's a Metasploit module, for instance. One of the nice things about the vulnerability scanner I use is it tells you whether or not there's already code out there for it, and that we also is in our scoring as well. If we know that this is a remote and if it's on an externally facing box and we know that there's a Metasploit module out there, that automatically is like uber patch.
A 10.
That's a 10 for us, regardless if the CVSS score is a 4.
Now you got to be careful when you say, "Oh, this box is internal, so remote exploit." It's not that's mitigating it.
Sure,
because it's an internal box. You have to be careful with that, because if hackers get into your environment, if they're able to access machines on the inside, then it's that mitigation is moot.
No, I totally understand, and that was a concept I was bringing up in our meetings just recently about the finger in the dam. We have controls, and they allow us a certain level of comfort because we know that things have to happen in a certain method or a certain way for those to be circumvented. The processes, the access, to be able to even log into the box, you have to do A, B, and C. And those give us a certain level of comfort, reduces the risk in some way. But at some point, if you have a massive, widespread vulnerability in your internal environment, at what point does the level of comfort, the lowering of the risk actually become non-existent? When are you just putting your finger in the dam and hoping that you just don't, the dam doesn't blow?
Well, there's a lot of things out there that you don't know. Let's take shell shock, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't public, but it was known, and we can see that on the internet, where they knew about it. What? Yeah, 12 years ago,
1998, I think. I think Julian Assange posted up shell shock vulnerability code, and they said no,
full disclosure.
Yeah, on full disclosure, and he was like, no, that's cool. No, it's just that's.
And then you hear nothing about it. Nothing. It was silent.
Well,
right?
Yeah, because nobody thought in that method or how to exploit that stuff.
Now let's assume that there is another shell shock out there. Okay, there was this since 1998.
Sure.
All right, let's assume there is another one. Now, does that mitigation you have in place, that it's an internal server, how does shell shock affect that? All right, it greatly reduces that mitigation.
Sure.
So you have to think like there are O days out there.
Yeah.
Right. You always have to keep that in the back of your mind and have layers of defense around it. So yeah, patching is a layer.
Sure. And your compensating controls, if your compensating control is, say, a VPN, a lot of people use them, a lot of people have them. The only way to get to the internal boxes from the outside world would be to employ a VPN. If your VPN is two-factored, which they should be if they aren't, and if your VPN doesn't have a second factor, you should definitely get one. All your VPN needs to have is a remote code execution or something and your compensating control or your level of comfort has just been shot all to hell because they can own your VPN box and then gain access to the internal side. So
yeah,
it's or a box itself with code that's running that could be just as vulnerable.
That's right. And I got 2 points on that. If split tunneling is enabled, so what if you have VPN? It doesn't matter. Your box can be, your laptop can be a jump point into your internal network. And secondly,
oh, he does. Oh, come on, bro. Work it out. Work it out. What was the second?
I pulled a pointy boots.
Oh.
Rick Perry.
Oh, yeah. Boots. So I'm sure you'll have a second point, but you're absolutely correct. If somebody was to make you go to a vulnerable website and your VPN was on, used a beef injection or something, they could take control of your box, use it as bastion host to get inside your network if your VPN is on. I mean, I myself, I don't use my VPN a lot unless I'm getting into something on the network. I try not to be involved with that as much as possible.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Some people are on it as soon as they get up in the morning and they're on it for 8 hours a day. And, you know, some compliance frameworks require you to not have split tunneling enabled. So that's, you know, that's another way that you can say, okay, probably shouldn't have split tunneling. And your management's like, yeah, but I like to be able to surf porn faster on my work computer when I'm at home. Well,
while I'm working.
And I don't want, you know, my company to know about it. And then you'd have to say, well, I don't know what PCI, for instance, requires you to not have split tunneling. All your traffic on your work box needs to go over your company's network, which, you know, that's capacity planning. And there's other things involved there too. But
yeah, or I don't, you know, I want to be able to research things while I'm working on production at the same time, because I don't want to have to get, you know, if I'm working on an issue, system's down, we have SLAs associated with it, time is money.
Yep.
I have to fix this now. I don't want to have to get off the VPN, do a search for something I need to know in order to fix something, and then get back on the VPN because that wastes time.
Yeah.
So there's that you have to weigh.
Yep.
Yep. And my second point, which I now remember,
awesome,
is that, you know, I'm tired of hearing that, oh, you know, the firewall, that's an appliance. You know, it's not vulnerable. It's an appliance.
Wait, you've actually heard this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've heard that. It doesn't need to be patched because it's an appliance.
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard this several times.
Oh, my.
So, you know, you just have to educate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually, it's a Linux server.
Yeah. It's running Linux.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
your Nest thermometer that you put in the office.
You can't sit there and run Telnet.
Yeah, exactly.
On our, you know, network.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you know, patch management is often made easier. I'm going to bring up this last point, and then I think we're going to have to go. But I think patch management is made a lot easier when you don't have a lot of things installed on the box, or you have a standardized, you know, framework or package, you know, type for a box. You know, like we call them gold images when I was in the Navy. And literally, it was a burned ISO onto a CD that we would deploy with this middleware stuff that we created. We call them gold images. My employer calls them half-baked AMIs because Amazon machine instances.
Yeah, yeah.
And what they do is they have a base install of the OS, and when they do that, it it only installs what's necessary. So you're not sitting with a default Ubuntu install that's going to put Xlibs and, you know, X11 desktop on a server that you don't necessarily need all that stuff on. I actually helped out with that, and I was able to take a default install, which normally has about 1,500 packages, and reduce it down to about 350. And it was still functional. The only thing I had to add was like SSH and NTP, which added another 20 or so packages. But You had a working OS with a console login for under 400 packages. And, you're still going to have vulnerabilities, but you don't have to worry about all those other vulnerabilities that may pop up because they're not installed or they're not even turned on by default. So often patch management can be alleviated by creating a standardized, build package for your servers, whether it be virtual or physical.
Yeah, excellent point. I mean, you reduce your attack surface greatly.
Indeed.
By not installing stuff.
Indeed.
So look at your laptop. What is installed by default at your company? Do you need that? Do you actually need Chrome, Internet Explorer, and Firefox installed? Do you need Adobe Air? Do you need Adobe Flash? What are all these things installed? Can we reduce that?
Yeah. If you're running a lot of Windows stuff, can you use a GPO to shut down certain services that are not needed? Or uninstall programs that aren't required, or have a specific software list of approved software that you only allow on your Windows boxes.
Yeah, Windows wants me to keep installing Skype. It says, "Do you need Skype?" I'm like, "No, I don't need it."
Yeah, right? I uninstalled it on a box the other day, and I downloaded a Windows update on my Windows 10 box, and Skype ended up back on my box. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, you got to watch that,
Yeah.
And so if you're running, let's say you've got 1,000 machines in your enterprise servers, have you or has your organization actually customized that build of operating system? Or do you just run the defaults? Do you need X11 running? Right?
Yeah.
And it has to do with performance too. I mean, if you can uninstall 3/4 of the packages installed on those operating systems across the enterprise, how much of a performance boost will you have?
Mm-hmm. And
how much of an attack surface are you reducing?
Yeah, and you're looking at less testing time because every patch that comes up, you don't have to necessarily test for because it's not installed. We don't even have libpng installed because we don't need X11. Okay, great. That's one less thing we got to worry about.
Yeah. Do you need Netcat installed on your application servers or your web servers? Really?
Wow.
Do you need, Nmap?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it installed by default across your enterprise?
No, I hope not on ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, by default on your operating system, it might be.
Yeah.
Why don't you start reducing that?
Yeah, that's
and that's my takeaway.
No, that's good. No, the one thing I got with my takeaway is you're going to get some hesitation and resistance probably from either developers who don't understand why you're trying to change their environment because that's what they've been used to doing. And a lot of times telling them, well, because we want to be secure, it's a nice sentiment, but a lot of them are worried about pushing code. They've got tickets from customers that want to push out new data, new features, new, widgets. So you have to help them understand that the product they're putting out needs to be secure as well, because that affects the same customers that also want this bar on the web app to be blue or something. You have to make them you have to make them understand why security is that way and why they should embrace it themselves.
Help them understand.
Yeah. Sometimes you want to just shake them like a puppy and well, probably shouldn't shake.
Do you shake puppies?
No, I don't shake puppies. I don't have a puppy. I got cats. They probably should be shaken too. But yeah, but it's an interesting thing. When we did the gold image where I work, there was a lot of resistance from operations because they didn't want to upset the apple cart, if you will. And after we implemented it, they loved it because it actually reduced deployment times. It didn't take as long to build out a box on Chef, and it was less time to patch. Even though and that represents real world savings for them, because if it only takes them a half an hour to put out a box instead of 2 hours like before, they've saved 75% of their time, which allows them to go do other things that are more important. So, try to, when you're implementing security or trying to implement security or new initiatives for security, try to work the time saving or money saving aspects into it. Try to find a way that it's going to be faster for them. The people who are going to help you implement that. If you can show them that it's going to only take 25% of the time that they're doing something now currently, that's a real savings for them, and they'd be more likely to help you implement that.
And you're going to have a more secure system.
Exactly.
As well.
So everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Yeah. Another example, GCC. Do you need that installed on your systems?
If it's Oracle, yes.
but then you got to uninstall it after Oracle's done, because hey, if I can, as an attacker, I can push some code out and then compile it on that very machine. That's awesome.
Yep. And that was my takeaway. Just try to make it useful and security. Make it a win-win for everybody. Show how you can save time or money or a level of effort when you're implementing new things. That's and if you can't do that, just go, okay, that's sometimes just the cost of doing business, is to make sure you're not ending up being the next Ashley Madison with your databases being dumped or your email spools being lifted. So that was it. So Mr. Boettcher, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to give you feedback about today's podcast?
Oh, they could look me up on Twitter.
Really?
I'm there.
Oh, really? Well, what is your Twitter handle over there?
I am at Boettcher Pwned.
Okay.
BOETTCHER PWNED.
I've been trying to get you to shrink that a little bit, but I guess we can't do that. So,
dot.
Dotty dot. I know, I'm the king of ellipses on there. I know. I'm trying to get better at that because it wastes 3 characters every time. So, on Twitter, I am at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE, all one word. The official Twitter handle is at BrakeSec, BRAKESec. We're on LinkedIn, Tumblr, Facebook. We have a Patreon account. If you find value in these, somebody did a couple of weeks ago. We had 1,500 downloads in a day. What's up with that? I thought I was hitting refresh too many times or something. So, welcome if you're a new listener. If you just went and downloaded all our podcasts and listened to them, I hope we haven't disappointed you.
The NSA caught on to us, so that's probably it.
All right. Hopefully they'll want us to sponsor us or something.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
It'll give us street cred. So if you find value in this, we do have a Patreon. If you do want to give us some money, that's fine. If you don't, the podcast will always be free. We're just here to educate and to basically pimp ourselves out. We have an official partnership with Cybrary.it. They do a lot of good work. We have a forum over there. They're constantly trying to teach and educate people. And we have kind of a thing, I don't know, with defensive security. Our folks, Andrew and the other guy. That's a joke. I won't forget Jerry. He's a good guy. They did a best of. They did episode 128, and we just happened to be on there because the last time we had him on our podcast, I totally blanked on Jerry's name. So, or was it Andrew? I forget. Well, yes.
Screw the pooch.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry about that. So, if once you're done listening to us, go over and listen to them. Or if you've come from defensive security, welcome. That was it for this week. I know Mr. Boettcher's wife is on her way home with vittles, so we're gonna let you go, Mr. Boettcher. Hopefully, she's a lovely lady, by the way. We love her. Thank her for letting Mr. Boettcher record with us.
My drug dealer.
She's a pharmacist, ladies and gentlemen. So that was it for this week. If we haven't jinxed him, we hope to have him on, have our interview on. We actually had an interview scheduled for this week, but he flaked. Different guy. He didn't flake. He got sick. And hopefully he'll be on in the near future to talk with us. So Mr. Boettcher, have a great week, sir. And I will talk to you on Thursday. And hopefully we'll post that interview on Saturday. So have a great week, sir.
Bye-bye.
Later.